Hey everyone, another hot one today in London. I've just finished reading or listening to a book by Dr. Nick Hall, PhD, who I'd never heard of before I read the book, and it's called I Know What to Do, So Why Don't I Do It? The New Science of Self-Discipline. It's a good book, a good audio book. First of all, it's completely not what I expected. Self-discipline books, I thought, do this, do that, try this habit, and etc. But Nick Hall used to be a lecturer. He used to teach medicine. Particular expert. He seems to be in neurology and runs institutes where he trains people, including people like the FBI and SWAT teams and everything. Also takes part in round the world, or maybe not round the world, but very, very long canoe races and ultra marathons and things like that. So probably a disciplined guy, if you want to call it that, very disciplined. Um, but his whole thing seems to be, I mean, there's a lot of information in this book. It's 100 things thrown at you, and you catch a few, and you drop a few, and you catch some more. And the ones you catch, you think, okay, so this one matters, this is important. His whole thing seems to be that discipline is basically based, firstly, on your beliefs, and then he gives some practical steps about how to firstly unearth and filter and improve your beliefs. That sounds a bit strong, but let's stick with that. And then also practical sort of how to be disciplined things. But it's really interesting. Um, and there's a couple of exercises he gives you in the book, which I'll go through, and they're just thought processes, thought exercises. So one of them, he says, is whenever things are a bit of a disaster, whenever you're in an emergency situation, that's not the time to be examining your beliefs. But there are certain phrases you can use which will help you to get through it more successfully, which will help you to cope and stave off things like depression. Of course, depression gets a mention in there. People who have a proclivity for depression, maybe they tend to have more activity on the left or right side of the brain, whatever. It's a lot deeper than that, but he does mention these things as well on the surface level. So when things have been a bit of a disaster, you say to yourself, "I'm glad I'm not." All right, so as an example of that, and I've done this a few times, and it certainly does help you to take take challenges more like water off a duck's back, let's say. So I don't know, you miss a bill payment, all right, and you think, oh damn, bill payment was late. Let's say it's your mortgage. You miss your mortgage payment because you had a couple of pounds too little in the bank, or you've had a big celebration or something, and you get a letter from them, and you could panic, you could freak out and everything, or you could just say, "Oof, I'm glad I'm not being repossessed. I'm not being repossessed. Possession, the house is being repossessed," or something like, maybe whatever happens. I'm glad I'm not. Will put you in a situation where you realize, hang on, I'm a lot better off than I could be. Yeah. So you get really ill, and you spend a little time in hospital, and you come out and it takes you 6 months to fully recover to previous fitness levels. I know that's happened to me. Um, but then a situation like that, if it did start getting me down, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not dead. That kind of thing, right? And then that's for emergency situations. And then there's a process of examining your beliefs. Um, and there's a few questions he takes you through. Are these my beliefs? Are they things I actually believe, things I actually want, things that matter to me? Or is it something I picked up from somebody when I was a child, or somebody when advertising. The whole idea of advertising is to make you feel shit, and then if you buy what we've got, you'll feel better. All right, or you're ugly, but if you buy what we've got, you'll be beautiful. That's advertising, yeah. It's designed to sell more stuff. That's what it's about. Originally, anyway, some advertising now, let's say for charities, whatever. I don't know. That's another discussion. So, are my beliefs mine? Um, do the beliefs serve me, i.e., do they help me achieve my professional goals? Do they improve my relationships? Do they make me happy? So, are the beliefs mine? Where did they come from? Do they serve me? Do they help me? Do they make me happy? Do they improve my relationships and my professional life? And these are questions just to keep at the back of your head. Like some people probably, I don't know, keep at the back of your head. I don't know, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? That's a good one too. Well, not what am I going to have for dinner tonight, right? That's not such a big Such a big question. But the ones about beliefs are good. Um, and For example, he gives the example of once flunking on a maths test, and his mother saying to him, "Oh, don't worry, no one in our family's ever been good at maths." So that became his belief. Oh, it doesn't matter because there's no point trying to get maths. It wasn't necessarily his belief. His beliefs changed later on, but he does say if they hadn't, then maybe he wouldn't have his own businesses and everything and be this speaker, very much in demand. Seems to have done very well for himself. But examine your beliefs, see where they come from, and do it repeatedly, because beliefs that serve you now or don't serve you now, that might change 2 months down the line, or 2 weeks, or 2 years down the line. And also, a lot of the self-help stuff you read or self-improvement stuff you read, whether it's Jordan Peterson, whether it's Tony Robinson, or is it Tony Robinson? No, I'm thinking of Anthony Robbins. Yeah, sorry, got a bit confused there. Beliefs and values are very, very important. If you know what your values are, it's easier to make decisions, and you just become a more effective, happier, more in person with more integrity, which is always good. So then another thing he talks about is fear, the value of fear, and you get a big, discourse on why, what chemicals are involved, etc., etc. But generally, a little bit of fear will help you to retain information because it makes you alert. So before you're going to learn something, do something a little bit frightening. I don't know. For people who attend these seminars, he says do something that frightens you. For some of them who are very timid, it might be stepping in front of somebody in a line, and they do it, and then they come back the next day and say, "Oh, that was amazing." And he uses this when he's training sales organizations as well. He takes them in his in one of his institutes. He's got like high ropes where you're high above the ground, like an assault course, like a combat assault course, and people go through that, and then they do the learning, and boom, they learn everything. All right, so you can prime your brain for learning by being a little bit scared. Okay, so that's something that could be useful. Then there's a lot of other interesting stuff as well. So heart rate training, and I'll get on to a point about people who are able to do amazing things, or people who live very well after this. Let's make a note of that. So heart rate training is essentially, he talks about all these percentages, and it's the idea of with exercise, pushing your heart rate to a certain level, then bring it down to a certain level, then pushing it up, then bring it down. To a lot of people, that may sound like high intensity interval training. HEAT, yeah, not HIT. There's only one I in there. That's high intensity training. Something completely different, but it's used to describe a lot of other stuff. High intensity training was originally proper stroke training. It was also formulated by a guy called Arthur Jones, and now HIT is anything which any class you want to sell in the gym, just call it high intensity training. But then there's high intensity interval training. The whole point is when you're stressed, your brain releases certain chemicals, and then when you recover, those chemicals are replaced by other chemicals. This obviously affects your performance and your behavior. And he says when you look at SWAT teams, the people who shoot the wrong people, they overreact. They're people whose heart rate doesn't increase enough, and the people who are able to recover and drop down, they'll stay more alive in these situations. All right, so he trains people to do that, and he says you can do it. He uses all these complicated numbers, but then it comes down to when you're exercising, get to the point where you can't hold a conversation with somebody, or you can't hold a conversation with somebody because you're breathing too hard, and then get back down to the point where you can hold a conversation, then up to no conversation, then down to conversation. He calls it the conversation rule, I think. Going on to people who have achieved amazing things, they all seem to have one thing in common, which is they have been through a lot of stress. Not all of them, but the ones he cites in the book. So there was a guy who did 28,000-mile canoe ride. I mean, that's just crazy, right? And when he asked his people, how do you achieve these things? They say, oh, this is nothing compared to. And they cite something difficult in their life. So he talks about his mother, who's 94 or 95 at the time that he wrote this book, super healthy. And she had the stress of living through the Blitz and not knowing, in London, and not knowing every morning, or not knowing every night if she'd be dead by the morning. And her job was actually to go around and cheer people up with entertainment. Yeah, really interesting book actually. Now I'm thinking about it. There's a lot in there. I mean, it's a long one. It took me about 4 weeks to get through, because I was listening to maybe 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there. So there's probably a lot in there which escapes me at this moment. I'm not able to recall. But a heavy book. If you're looking for an easy listen or an easy read, probably not a great one. Very entertaining, just because it's so informative. So I'd give it a strong 8 out of 10. So that's, I know what to do, so why don't I do it? Well, it comes down to your beliefs. It comes down to your ability to deal with stress. And if your beliefs about things are a certain way, you'll be more motivated, and there's lots of brain chemistry involved, and going through hard stuff is really good. Taking it easy is going to give you a shit life. one of my jobs that I used to have to go around and speak to people about, you know, their education level, and it was amazing. You know, the people who have it easy. I never thought there was such a thing as a person who didn't get any GCSEs, which is sort of, you know, the secondary school, the high school exams in the UK. I just thought, you know, you show up, you keep your fucking eyes up. Sorry, you keep your eyes open, and you pass your GCSEs. As simple as that. And you know, that was from a background, not to use it as, you know, oh, look at me, you know, stripes on my shoulder or something, but for, you know, there are people who come, they've got English as a second language, disadvantages at home because, you know, small house, poor parents and everything. They all get their GCSEs, but then they had a little bit of hardship maybe, right? Whereas I used to go around and interview these people, you know, they live in these huge houses with, you know, 3 or 4 Mercedes on the front, and their parents have a business, and it's the most beautiful, like some of the most incredible houses. A guy who lived on it on farmland, and the kitchen was like something at work. I mean, it was amazing. And when I spoke to him and I said, so how did you get to school? Well, I didn't get my GCSEs because school was boring. So how many GCSEs do you have? Oh, I ain't got none. What? How? How is this possible? All the advantages, nice, comfortable house. You didn't have to learn English to go to school. It blew me away. But then it kind of made a bit more sense after I heard this book. No adversity. You know, Nick Hall uses the example, not the chap who lived in a really beautiful house. Yeah, if it don't work out, I'll just work for my parents' business. Yeah, fair enough. You know, nothing wrong with that. But I was just shocked. Like, how can somebody not get any GCS? And I met tons of them, and all similar backgrounds. Not all rich parents, but all similar. You know, no troubles, nothing. A few with absent fathers, all right. Well, very few absent mothers, but lots of absent fathers. Anyway, so what was I getting onto here? No, it's escaped me. But look, it's a really good book. You know, he uses the example. If you put your arm in a sling, then after about a day, you'll start losing muscle, you'll start losing strength. And it's the same with your mind. You know, for these people who want to retire and then I'll put my feet up. He says, if you know anybody like that, you will see them visibly and rapidly deteriorate their health, their mental capacities, everything. You know, those who take on something new or who learn something new, maybe playing the piano, who volunteer for a charity, they're the ones who stay healthy and live longer lives. Simple as that. Yeah. So don't take it easy. When you're in an emergency, ask yourself, or say to yourself, I'm glad I'm not. Examine your beliefs. He talks about, you know, let me add this because this is something that escaped me, but it's very, very useful, I think. When you're setting goals, start at the end and come backwards in steps. So to get there, first I need to do this. Identify something you can actually do. Get to a step you can actually do. And then when you've done it, you know, don't worry about the outcome. So worry about the activity. Always think about something you can control, which is something that Viktor Frankl did. Always thought about something you could control. Viktor Frankl is a guy who survived the Nazi concentration camps, the death camps, extermination camps. And always have a belief that there's a purpose. So somebody apparently asked Viktor Frankl once, how did you survive? And he said, I always believed somebody would ask me that question, and that's why I survived. That's how I got through. He had a belief that, you know, there was a point to it. So yeah, with the goals, focus on the activity. So he says, let's say you're a salesperson and your goal is to do an extra sale a week. Well, you can't control whether or not you'll do that extra sale, but you can control, okay, I'm going to make 5 extra prospect calls a day. So that's something you can control. And if you make those 5 extra prospect calls, whether or not you get the extra sales, you've succeeded. All right? And it's almost like I've just opened the floodgates in my head and all the information is coming to me now. But that would give you about a half an hour book review, so I'm not going to do it. I will say, if you enjoyed that review and if it sounds interesting, yeah, listen to the book or get the book. I know what to do, so why don't I do it? The New Science of Self-Discipline by Dr. Nick Hall. Thank you.